All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, Gary, can you take notes by notes here? Because I don't remember who's here for the last one. I want to make sure everybody gets their certificates. Okay. So, welcome to Arcreader training part trace. Some of you have been in Arcreader training for the third time now, and since our tenure has started here, but some of you, this may be the first or the second time, so we're going to assume that everybody's new to it. But we're doing a different type of venue this time. The last two times have been a little bit more hands-on, where you've been zooming in, zooming out, and doing things like that. This time what we're going to do is I'm going to be controlling everything, going through each thing, and we're recording it. We're recording my voice, and we're recording our actions on the screen. So we'll have that as a living document for you guys to go back and reference if you are like, what did she click that one time when she did this? And you can see what we did. And I'll have it broken up kind of into chapters as well, so that you can see a description for to zoom into a map. Then you would click on that part and just watch that part of the movie, and so on and so forth. So without further ado, we will get started. And what you will do, the first thing is you need to find the Arcreader program on your computer. Some of you may already have shortcuts to Arcreader on your desktop, which is fine, but we're going to assume that you do not. So if you're using Windows 7 and you were going to all programs, just in case you didn't see Arcreader right there, then you would look for the ArcGIS folder, and then from there you would open up the Arcreader. And once you open that, then it will open up a blank map, and you just have to go to the open folder. Then what you're going to want to do is make sure that you have access to Server 2, which is nicknamed GIS, and for this training, we have it mapped as the L drive. Some of you may have it mapped as a different letter, so it just depends on what you have, but you're looking for Server 2. And once you get into Server 2, then you're going to have this full list of folders here. So you're going to be looking for the Arcreader folder, and then we have different years available. So always you want to try to use the most recent version, so we're going to click on 2012. The 2010 and 2011 folders are still out there, but most of the links are broken in that map. So if you try to access a map from the 2011 folder or 2010 folder, it's purposely broken because we don't want you to use old information. But I keep them in there so that I can remember what layers I had in there previously. Even though the links are broken, I can at least see, okay, I had parks, I had this, I had that. And I can make sure that we are retaining that same level of consistency in 2012. But if you do open it up, then it's going to basically bring up a blank map for you. So if we open up Pub 2012-1, that's the first one we've made this year. We actually made it today. Then it's going to bring up all of the layers over here in this area, and then it's going to bring up our map display in this area. So this area is called the Table of Contents, and that's where we keep all the different layers available. And this area is called the Data View. Down here at the bottom, we have these different tabs, which we'll be talking about later, but if you hover over it, you can see that it says Data View here. And if you change it, some of you have been doing this already, you can go into Layout View if you're ready to print out a final map, but we'll talk about that at the end. And then we have a button here that's called Refresh. So if at any point in today's training it gets hung up and it looks like you have half of the screen, but the other half of the screen is white, then you just hit this Refresh button and it just redraws the map and brings everything back to the forefront. So, let's say that you opened up Pub 2012-1 and you got some kind of error message. Notice that I did not get an error message of any type. It came up and there weren't any windows saying this didn't work or this didn't work. And that's what it's supposed to do for you. If you get any kind of error message, or if you get any red exclamation points in any of your files over here, then something has happened. It could either mean that a link is broken on your machine, maybe you have a wrong version and you didn't know it. Could be a lot of different things. But it basically means that you need to have either me or Carrie come look at the machine so that we can, fix what it is. Most likely, you have the wrong version of Arcreader or the wrong file open. So let's say that Carrie's not available, it's not a Thursday and she's not here, and I'm already moved out to Denver because you guys know I'm moving to Denver. So Gary calls me and says, Sue just called and she's having trouble with Arcreader. I'm going to pick on you, Sue. So the first thing I'm going to ask Sue when I call her back is I'm going to say, can you open up the help, and then can you go into About Arcreader? And what this is going to tell me is what version are you using? Because that's generally, out of all the questions and comments and issues that I've had for the past 6 months, it's been wrong version of Arcreader. So right now we're running version 10, and so all of you need to make sure that when you go back to your personal computers that you have version 10 on the computer. If you don't, then I will help you get it installed. But it is you don't have to download anything. It's already saved out there on the server for you. You would just go to Arcreader, and then here's the file, Arcreader 10 Windows V2, and then you would go to Setup. And notice there's a bunch of different setups here. Always go to the one that says Application, Setup, Application, and that opens the executable file that will install Arcreader on your machine. Okay, so a lot of this you can do on your own. If you have the old version, you need to uninstall 9.3, which is the old version, first before you install the new version, and it'll prompt you to do that. So if you try to go through the motions of installing this new one, it's going to stop you and say, no, you have an old version, you need to uninstall it first. And then you would just go into your control panel and go into add and remove programs right there. This is all assuming that you have Windows 7. So if you have something like Windows XP or Vista, it may be slightly different, but this is how you would do it using Windows 7. And then here's my Arcreader 10. I would just click on that one, and then I would go to uninstall if I was wanting to uninstall that. Okay, so that's the general setup, and that's Arcreader 10. So I'm going to hit OK there. The next thing we'll talk about is just the general table of contents. There's a lot of different layers in here, and you'll notice that some of the layers are checked on, and some of them are checked off. And the projector is really, really bright, so you can't actually see this, but on the projector anyway, but you can see it over here. This first box has an X in it, or a checkbox in it, but it's a really, really light gray. And at first, in the last class that we did this morning, I was like, why won't it come on? Because I kept clicking on it and nothing would come on. And then we figured out at lunch that it has to do with the projector. So it is on, it's just a really light gray. And the reason why it's not showing up is because we're at the wrong scale. So you see here how it says, these are street labels for when you're at a scale of less than 500. So this is my scale bar area right here. So if I want those street labels to show up, then I would need to type in 489. And then notice that that street box automatically showed up dark. Okay. The reason I haven't is so that you don't have to go back over to the table of contents and turn things on and off. So depending on what scale that you zoom in and out to, I'm going to zoom out a little bit, different things will show up checked on and off depending on what scale you're at. So as we continue to zoom out, notice that now the 500 to 2000 scale one turned on, that one automatically turned off, and if I keep zooming out, then this one, the greater than 2000 scale, will come on. So that's just a general thing. So most of the time you're not even going to have to mess with these street labels. Those will automatically adjust based on whatever map scale that you're at. Then we have, and this little box right here underneath each of those boxes where you click that looks like it has looks like a little scale bar underneath it. That's what it means, that those are dynamically scaled labels. So as you change, then it's going to change with it. So basically anytime it has that little minus sign underneath the box, just leave those alone. We also have the subdivision labels. And with the subdivision labels, you can see that those are scattered throughout Farragut. And as we zoom in to the subdivision labels, if you look at the size of them now, and if we zoom in, the size of those get bigger relative to the map. So they don't stay, they're not dynamic. So as you zoom in, those words are going to get bigger and bigger and bigger also. Okay. So if you don't want to have the subdivision label turn on, you can simply turn that off, and then you can just focus on the streets. And if you think the streets are too big, then you can continue to zoom in. Now the street road names became smaller as well, so that's available to you. And if we turn those off, then again we zoom in a little bit closer, we can see the names of each of those streets. So if you're interested in a specific parcel, then all those streets automatically turn on for you. So far, when you've opened up Arcreader, you haven't really had to mess with too many of the labels over here just to get a plain parcel lot map of where a place is. So we have the parcels and we have the streets turned on. Okay, so we have talked about how to get to your folder or how to get to your file. This next button here is how to get to recent files. Some people have requested an Arcreader just for them. Jay, for example, in Parks, he wanted an Arcreader that had certain layers that he could zoom into places and then give Public Works a map that says, this is what I need to change. So we made one specifically for him. And if you want that same setup, you say, you know, I like all these different layers and it's great for the general, but I'd really like to have this, this, and this because it would help my workflow. We can make one very, very quickly for you. We can start from this map that we've created and add, remove, change symbology, change practically anything, and make it custom to you, and then we'll save it in the Arcreader folder for you. But you can open up your recent files there. Print, you can either print to your local printer or you can print to PDF, so you would print exactly what you saw here on the screen, or you could print with the town borders on it, and you could even add your labels. We'll go over the layout tools a little bit later. Notice that when we went to the layout tool here, layout view, then a new set of tools became available, but again, we'll talk about that at the end. So I went back into data view, and now those tools became grayed out. I can't see them anymore. So that's the print. The next one is toggle the table of contents. So if you do that, you can turn the table of contents on or off. So if you want more viewable space and you don't want to show the table of contents, then you can just hit that and that gets rid of it. That's been several of my requests too, is I'll come up and people are like, I lost the place where I click things on and off, I don't know what I did. And generally it's where we just have to go in and hit that little button. So the next set of buttons you're probably fairly familiar with. We have your zoom in, zoom out, your continuous zoom in and zoom out, fix zoom out, and then pan. So zoom in and zoom out works where any place where you click within the data view over here, you're going to zoom in to that location and it will center. So if I click on that, notice that not only did it get me closer, but it also moved this parcel to the center of my viewing area. If I click on this parcel, for example, now it moved that one to the center of my viewing area. If I click on zoom out and I click up here, same thing, it now moved that parcel into the center of my viewing area, and I can keep zooming out, or maybe I can focus more on that cul-de-sac, and now that cul-de-sac's in the middle and I'm continuing to zoom out. The continuous pan and zoom, which is the third button here, is the one that I probably use most frequently because it's a little bit quicker. If you click and hold and push up, then it zooms out. If you click and hold and pull in towards your body, then it zooms in. So the continuous pan and zoom is really good for just, you know, if you need to zoom out really quickly, then you don't have to keep hitting that zoom out. You can just do this and that and okay. That's to help everybody wake up. All right. Then we have the fixed zoom in, fixed zoom out. Fixed zoom in, fixed zoom out works how you never move your mouse back into the field of the data view. You always just keep your mouse up here and you keep clicking and it will automatically zoom just to the center of your current viewing area. And you can keep clicking that and it'll keep zooming you in towards that cul-de-sac. Fixed zoom out the same way. You never move your mouse back into the field of view, but it keeps just zooming out based on the center point that you're at. And then pan, I'm sure all of you guys are familiar with. You just move it around. You click and hold and pull where you want the map to be. All right. The next button up here is the zoom to full extent. Anytime you click, okay, let's say this happens. Okay, you've zoomed and you don't know what you did, and all of a sudden everything disappeared and it went white and you're like, I don't know what I did. Anytime it becomes all white like that and you feel like you've become lost, click that globe button and it's going to take you back to all of Knox County. And here's Knox County here, here's Farragut, and all you have to do at that point is you can zoom in to Farragut. And you start to see it appear again, you start to get that comfort factor back where you know where you're at, feet back on the ground. The other option is, so you can hit the full extent, or you can use these two bookmarks that I've kind of pre-programmed for you. So if you go to bookmarks and you go to 40,000 extent, that takes you to the full extent of Farragut that's really tight into to where we're at, or you can go to 48,000 and that gives you just a little bit more white space on the edge. It takes you all the way up to the Pellissippi interchange, and that's why we chose that one, so that we could see the relationship of the interstate a little bit better. So those are the two bookmarks. If you would like other bookmarks, everybody wake up. Wake up. All right, thanks. If you would like other bookmarks, like you know, a 5,000 or something like that, we can program those in as well. Just let me know, let Carrie know what would make it most efficient for you, and we can put it all in there. All right. You know, my professor in college used to throw erasers at people when they would fall asleep. It was always fun. If I only had erasers. Okay, so the tools, there's some other tools up here. This can automatically take you into some certain places. You can also save places that you're interested in. So these are just a couple other tools. We won't go into those too much because we don't use them, and they're already in here. And then you also have what's called the magnifier. So I didn't go into this in the last class, but that basically means that you can have like a picture-in-picture kind of thing. So if you want to show where a location is on top, then you can add that magnifier window without zooming into your entire thing. And you can also change the size of that magnifier window. And these tools work the same way within magnifier. Actually, they don't. What do I have to do here? Magnification factor. So if you want to zoom in the magnification window, then you actually, it's a little confusing. You have to right-click on magnifier window, and then you get to the magnification factor area, and then you would change it to like 800, and then it would zoom you in a little bit closer. So it's not completely intuitive, but it is there if you don't want to change the scale of the rest of your map. It's just something as an option. Okay, so we talked about all of those tools. The next thing we'll talk about is, let's say that you needed to do some work at McPhee Park, and so you needed to zoom into McPhee Park, but you weren't exactly sure where it was. Well, we have a handy-dandy set of layers down here called Parks, and when you turn that on, it automatically turns on and labels the parks that are all around town. And I left Pocket Park on. I need to turn that one off. I used to have Pocket Park turned off because we just don't use it very often, but it's on right now. So McPhee Park's down here, so we're going to zoom into McPhee Park, and you see that we have the entire McPhee Park plus the Dimick and the Seal property in there, and then we have all the facilities and everything else that you might need. And yeah, okay. So, and let's say what you wanted to do is you were at McPhee Park, but then you're like, well, I need to go back to the regular town boundary, but I don't want to zoom all the way back. You could go in, or let's say this way. Okay. So you're at McPhee Park, and you zoom into the splash pad. And you're talking to somebody who's at your desk about the splash pad, and you say, yeah, here's the splash pad, and we're going to add a new water slide feature over here that goes directly into the splash pad. Then what you could do is talk about that, and then if you wanted to go back to the full extent of the park, you would just hit that back arrow button, and that would take you back to the previous most extent that you were just interested in. And if you keep hitting back, then it's going to keep following. It's almost like a timestamp following exactly your backward progress of where you were in the world. So the return to previous extent just keeps taking you back, back, back. And then you can do go to the next extent, and that takes you back all the way to the splash pad if you want to. So those are useful tools if you're moving around on a map. Let's say you were at McPhee Park and then you needed to jump over to another park, then you could get back and forth to them without having to pan and zoom and do a lot of stuff like that. The next area over here is the scale. It's a ratio scale, which means that one something is equal to 1,057 something else's. Okay? And the something, the unit in this case, is feet. That's what this particular map is based on. So 1 foot in this map is equal to 1,057 feet on the ground. So if you're trying to get your map set to a specific scale to match some type of engineering drawing that you have or something else, then you can type that in as long as you're taking into account that your map that you're looking at is probably in 1 inch equals 2,000 feet or something. So if your map is in 1 inch equals 2,000 feet, you're going to have to do a little bit of math in your head to convert feet into inches so that you know what one inch is in feet. So let's say that we were trying to do 1 inch equals 2,000 feet. Then I would do 2,000 times 12. Where am I at? Calculator. It's gone. Accessories. We need to just pin that so it's always there. Pin this. Okay. So 1 inch equals 2,000 feet would be 2,000 times 12, 24,000. So that would be 24,000 right here. Okay, so that would be a 1 inch equals 2,000 feet map. So sometimes you'll just have to think about those types of things every once in a while. One thing that we'll also talk about is, since this map is in feet, the actual coordinate system that this map is in Tennessee state plane based on the 1983 datum U.S. feet. That's the standard surveying measuring algorithm that we should be using at this day and age. People may give you stuff that's measured off of 1927. They may give you stuff in lat long. They may give you stuff in UTM or some other crazy kind of coordinate system. And what you should take away from that is, if you remember that it's supposed to be in Tennessee state plane feet and you tell somebody that, great. If you don't, I'm going to have it in the little workbook that I'm going to give to you with your certificate that kind of defines everything that we've done here, and it'll be a PDF that'll go along with this movie file, so that you can say, oh, our map is in Tennessee state plane feet, and you'll know exactly what to give them. It's actually even more specific than that, because all Farragut and Knox County is in Tennessee state plane U.S. feet 1983 Harn, so they have to add a little bit more detail in there. But the point is that there's a lot of different coordinate systems out there, and if your location, let's say that you give me a location to put in there, and if that location isn't showing up where it's supposed to be on the map, it could be that there's a problem with the coordinate system. So that's something that Carrie and I would resolve for you, and we try to figure out why is it not projecting in the right coordinate system, and we do the geospatial math to get it to magically appear where it's supposed to. Or we just move it, whichever your budget allows for. Okay, so, all right. So that's right. The next thing that we'll talk about is the identify tool. So these are the tools that you guys will probably be using the most. The identify tool tells you about features that you actually click on within the map, and then the binoculars are the find tool. So that tells you about features that you don't know where they are, but you want to find out. So if you're at the right place, let's say that you're right here at the McPhee Park property, and you want to know who owns that parcel. Then you would click on it using the identify tool, and it flashes it up on the screen for you, and it tells you that it is identifying from the topmost layer in this area, and the topmost layer happens to be the town parcels, and this particular owner is the Schubert Family Limited Partnership. So you could go in and find out information about the acreage, that it's 20.1 acres. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you can get the address. So if you needed any type of information for a document that you're preparing, then you can get a lot of that from in here. That's if you know where your property already is and you need to find out more information about a specific place. But let's say that you had on a couple other layers as well. Let's say that you had on subdivisions. And you were up here in McPhee Manor. And we're going to zoom into McPhee Manor right here. Is this one McPhee Manor or is that one McPhee Manor?
That's Bridgewater.
The blue one? Oh, yep, you're right. Okay, so you're up here in McPhee Manor, right there. And you didn't know that it was McPhee Manor because you had the subdivision labels turned off. If you had them turned on, it'd be right there, but you didn't know. So we can use the identify button to either identify the town parcels, or you can say, tell me everything that that particular parcel is in. So you can change the identify from to select within just anything that's visible, or select within all layers. If we do visible layers and click on that, it's going to say over here that that's a town parcel and it's in subdivision McPhee Manor. If we do all layers, it's going to look at every single thing in this table of contents over here and give you anything that it can on that parcel. So if we click on that, it's going to take it a minute because it's looking at everything in the map. But then once it's done, then it's going to give you a lot more information about this place. Okay, so now what this tells me is that it's in the town center buffers area, so it's within either the 1, 2, or 3 mile town center buffer. And we'll go through that one in a minute. It's within Knox County zip code 37934. There are buildings on that lot, and
It's just telling you about that one spot, not the whole parcel.
did I happen to click? So I happen to click on a building. I happen to click on a building at the same time, but even though I don't have buildings turned on. And let's see, town parcels. It tells me what the zoning classification is for that area. It tells me that the general land use is single family. Tells me that it's in Farragut High School zone. It tells me these things here. This is the hillshade value. You guys don't really have to worry about that too much, but that's basically the aspect at which sun hits that area. So if you wanted to do some calculations for solar, then actually that's not the aspect. That's hillshade. Hillshade is telling you the azimuth of what area is in shade when the sun hits it. So it's a little different, but if you are interested in advanced type raster, a raster is a specialized GIS tool that we can analyze large surfaces based on the digital elevation model. So the hillshade is a derivative of that raster. We won't really talk about that because nobody uses it except me. But it also tells us that it's within the Farragut imagery, so if we needed any of that information, it's all there for you. Plus, a cool thing here is that it also says it has a hyperlink for the Knox County schools, so you could click on that hyperlink and it would take you automatically to the high school's website if you wanted to. And we can add that type of hyperlink to anything that you want. So if you have some type of layer that is associated with some type of website, it could either be parcel information, some type of permit, whatever you got. If you have a website, then we can link it to it. So just be thinking about that as we go along. Okay, so that's the identify tool. Other people's workflow may be that they don't know where the parcel is. Somebody calls in and there's just a complaint right off the bat and they need to zoom to that place because they don't know where it is. So they would use the find tool. And with the find tool, then what you would do is you would type in a location. So let's say we were interested in Town Hall. First you have to spell it correctly. All right. So all that you have to type in is the number and the first word of the road. You don't have to type in like Highwick Circle or if there's a bunch of St. John blah 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 blah. Just type in the first word. And you can either have it search through the visible layers, which is everything that's turned on, or you can have it search through all layers, or if you know that it's, in this case, it's just going to be a parcel. So I'm going to have it search faster and say, find a parcel that has this address. Okay, by going in there and selecting the in instead of just leaving it as the default, you'll get your results a lot faster. So I'm going to say, find 11408 in town parcels, find. And it, sure enough, comes up with a result right here that says 1148 Municipal Center Drive. And if I right-click on that, then it'll either flash to it. And I didn't see anything flash. Let's do that again. Didn't see anything. So that must mean it's outside of my field of view, which we all know that it is. So if we right-click on it again, we say, okay, we'll just pan to that one. That's going to keep my scale the same, but it's going to move me to the location where I'm interested in. Okay. So I'm going to say, well, I don't really care about my scale. Let's just zoom to it and make it big within my screen. So now I have 11408 Municipal Center Drive right there, and I can double click on it, and it automatically gives me all the information from the identify window as well. So it tells me that it's Town of Farragut, how big the acre is, what the parcel ID is, the address, all that good stuff. Say, yes, this is all fine and good, but I'm a codes person and I need to know what, where that deck was that they just built. So you can then come down here to the bottom and turn on your aerial, and you can see a little bit more information about the parcel. You can see, what's been built, what's changed, and so on and so forth. So the way that I would like to encourage people to use the find tool is that once you've used the find tool and found the parcel that you're interested in, wait until you've zoomed to that layer to turn on your aerial. Because again, we're talking about performance and speed, and the GIS big machine down here is pretty fast, but some of your other computers aren't necessarily so fast. So if you have one of those slower machines, then these little tips will help you save time and not have to wait for it to sit there and think about what it's supposed to do next. If you're really far zoomed out, like let's say you're at the town extent, then it takes it a little bit longer to draw. But if you're zoomed into where you were, so I'm going to use that zoomed previous extent, go back, then it's much faster if you're already there.
If the name of the street's the south, north, east, west. Yep.
Can you give me a specific street
Well, like
example?
Williamsburg or Kingsgate, east and west of Kingsgate. So if you just typed in an address of Kingsgate, you may or may not find what
You're right. It's going to give me anything. If I type in Kingsgate up there, it's going to give me every single address that has Kingsgate in it. If I know a little bit more about the road, then I can type in West Kingsgate. But if you do that,
in a W, or does it matter?
that's what I was going to say. If you just type in W and it doesn't return anything, then go ahead and type in West, because that's the way that all of them should be. It looks like I had an extra space in there. It's not as intuitive as Google, but it's pretty good. Okay, so now I'll type in West Kingsgate. Still doesn't like that. Wonder if I have something else in there that I can't see.
Some of them are W.
Yeah, it looks like some of them are different and some of them are, I don't know.
That's some of the problem I run into on certain streets. It's finicky sometimes about how you type it in.
Yeah, it can be, but remember that it's building off of data that's from the county, so we can't change any of the information from the parcels. So if you had an address number, let's say that you had 11408, but you didn't know the name of the street, or you weren't exactly sure what it was going to be, just type in the number, and it's going to give you every single address that has 11408 at the beginning. So you could say, is it that one? No, it's not that one. And you could look at what the address is supposed to be there. It's this one. No, it's not that one. And what it's doing is it's searching for 11408 everywhere within these, every field that's within the town parcels layer. We could even get more specific and say only search in the address line. And that would help us even more. Now we hit find there. That's much better. Okay, so if you type in 11408 and it's the results that it's giving you just aren't really very helpful, or there's just too much to go through, then first make sure that you have in set to town parcels. Second, make sure that you have the in field set to address, and then it will give you only what you want for this particular scenario. And you may be wondering, well, that's a lot of steps that I've got to remember to do, but each of you are going to use these tools in different ways, so there's not really a great way to make a process flow for every single person, but we can make it customizable for each person. So, and we can tell you how to change it. If you were interested in only searching in parcel IDs, you could do that as well, or you could search for any field that we have. So you could say, you know, find all parcels that are 20 acres. I don't know if this will work, but no, but. It's looking for an exact match. So there's one field or one record in Farragut that has an exact 10-acre parcel. That's kind of a pie in the sky thing, but I'm just saying you can search for different things depending on what you look for. But that's a good question.
Could you do like the greater than symbol?
Let's try it. Never tried. Greater than. I think it would look for anything that had that text exactly. Yeah, it's looking for anything that has that. Find features that are similar or contain.
What about between 10 and 20? 10 dash.
Let's do just 10 and uncheck that one and see what happens. No.
Do 10 to 20.
That actually would be pretty cool.
That would be helpful, but it doesn't look like I have that kind of capability to define it like that. That would be helpful to do that though. So really what it's doing is it's doing just a simple Boolean search string of does this entry match something else in one of the fields in the table. So if it doesn't match exactly, it's again not as user-friendly as Google, but it has all of our data associated with it. But I wish there was a way, I don't know of a way that I could program that into the find button, but no way?
That's a note. You can do an arc map.
Yeah.
We had the enterprise thing. That would do something else that you do.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's something that you can do in the full-blown version very quickly. You could just tell it, we have that version open here, and let's say that we were interested in parcels. And this is a little bit to a side because you don't have the full-blown version, but we've been kind of toying around with the idea of what if everybody had access to the full-blown version and you could do a lot more. You don't have to, but you just have the capability to do more. So if everyone had the full-blown version, which is like a $25,000 a year, right now we pay $9,000 a year for license to ArcGIS for just the big computer, but if everybody had it, it would be $25,000. So we're like, well, it's not that far off, and then everybody would have access, but we would just have to consider that. But what we would do is we would go to properties and we'd say, show me everything that has, did I pass it? Parcel ID, parcel type. I think it's at the end. Calculated area is greater than 10. So we could do that. And then it only shows us the parcels that we're interested in. So we can go in and query the data out real quickly and get a little bit more information out of things, but you can't do that in Arcreader alone. So if you had interest in being able to do a little bit more hands-on querying and be able to find the information that you need without having to either A, come to the GIS computer, or B, send us an email, then you may want to consider saying, I would be interested in getting like the ArcView on my computer if we get an enterprise license, and then you could have that capability to do things.
That's something that they do. We could make ArcView with those categories, those layers put in.
Yeah, and if what Carrie was saying is good, if that was something that you think you would use frequently in your workflow, like if you think, I use parcels that are greater than 10 acres a lot in my maps, and it would be nice if you could just have that layer in there so that I can look at those. I don't know of any reason why you would want that specific scenario, but I use X a lot. Could you do a definition query and have that appear in my Arcreader? Then we can take that layer from ArcMap and then put it into your Arcreader, your personal one, so that you would have those layers that you needed.
About land use, like where properties, where that R1, whatever.
Yep, definitely, because right now, if you
Do that vacant, what are vacant, which one is vacant, and then 28 or
Yeah, so Mark was saying it'd be nice if you could just turn on, we have land use right now, which I'll zoom to layer. So it's a nice little Easter egg type map here. Let me turn off some of these other, where's subdivisions? There it is. Okay, so here's land use, and if I expand my land use category, then I can see all the different general categories that are there. We have agricultural, church and private school, commercial, blah, 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 blah. So it would be nice if we knew which ones were either unused or vacant. Then we could go into the full GIS and create a layer just for you that would say, Mark's vacant layers or something like that. And then you would have those that you could use in concert with your other things. Right now, you would have everything in there, and you can't turn just one of these off, unfortunately. So if you click on it, it doesn't do anything. But in our version, if we were to click on it, then we could go in and change the color, do whatever we wanted to do. So you got to remember, Arcreader is like Adobe Reader. You can't really change much. It's really just a view of whatever we've assigned, whatever we told it to show. Okay, so we do have the parcels land use, and we'll just go ahead and talk about zoning too while we're there, since Mark brought that up. So there's two different categories here. We have zoning, and then we have the parcels land use. And you'll notice that there's a lot fewer categories in parcels land use than there is in zoning. So the zoning actually has all the different areas in there, and zoning is one of these layers that's in constant stage of, it's always dynamic, so as things change we have to go in and update things. But Carrie and I don't always know which areas need to be changed, so we rely on you guys to be our eyes and our ears to help us keep this thing QC'd and up to date and as usable as possible. So if you see something that's wrong size, digitized wrong coding, anything, let us know. A lot of things we can fix really quickly. We just have to go in and change a code and it's done. Other things, if we have to redigitize in something to make it, for example, like buffers, make them exactly a certain distance off of the road, then we can do that as well. So recently we went back into all the buffers and made sure they were exactly 50 feet everywhere. So in those cases, then, just let us know where you see the problem and we can fix it. And, okay, so that's zoning. If I want to zoom to the full extent of zoning again, I could just right-click on that layer, and it would automatically zoom me to the full extent. And I can turn off my zoning and my partial land use at this point. Okay. So we've talked about the identify tool. We've talked about the find tool. The other button that we'll talk about extremely briefly is the go to XY. I didn't talk about this in the last one, but if you have a GPS unit and it gives you some kind of XY coordinates, and you just want to post those on the map or go to that location, then you can type them in from your GPS unit. So longitude value would be like 86 something, and latitude would be 36 something, something like that. Then you could zoom to it. I don't really know of any, the latitude and longitude right off the top of my head of where that's going to be. So, but we could zoom to that location and it takes us right to it. So somewhere outside of Farragut, but notice that I put in the negative sign and it automatically changed it for me to west. So you don't have to type in the degrees and the minutes and seconds and all the other stuff. You can just type in something as close as you know. Oops, that's in Russia. Hang on. Let me get out of Russia. Hang on. Don't want to be there. All right. Yes.
So if we have a grid system throughout the town, what's it called? Grid system?
It's based on the state ordinance.
So we plug that in. If for some reason we don't know exactly where one of those are, we can go in and plug that in.
Yeah. So if you had a base station that you were trying to match up to, if somebody's giving you some coordinate, yeah, the little.
Is that a layer on here?
It is a layer in here as well. If there's some marker out as you're walking around and you see a marker and it has a Tennessee State Plane coordinate in there, right now it's set to latitude and longitude, but you can easily go in and say, hey, set it to feet, and then you would type in that value that you saw there. So you would type in, for the X value, you would type in something like this number, 262684.723.46, and then for the Y value, you type in 65619.97, and again, you could zoom to that layer, and it zooms to that point, and it'll take you right to it.
That's Farragut.
Okay. Hang on 1 second, I'll get back there.
It does right now too.
Yeah, and it'll zoom you right to that location.
So if it has an address and subdivision for house, we show that address. Dig it up.
Yes. Is that degrees, minutes, seconds, decimal degrees? Crap.
Or degrees.
Yeah, it's degrees, minutes, seconds. That means I have to get symbols. Don't worry about it.
No, you don't. It should give you multiple boxes.
Mm.
So
With this.
just type it in 35, see if it works. 35, 52, 39.
It won't work that way. That?
Yeah. And then 84.
Yeah, it did. Okay.
84, 10, 25.
Negative. Yay! Okay, so that got us to it. So that was useful to know, something I didn't know, that you can just type it in without the degrees and minutes, seconds symbol in there, so I didn't want to have to go find the degree symbol in Excel or Word or something like that, so we just typed in 84 space 10 space 25, negative in front of it, and it automatically put in the degrees and minutes, so that's nice. Probably something you guys will never use, but there may be the case where you will use it, so that's the only reason I bring it up. Okay. You can also add a call out. So let's say, Sue, that you were interested in making a map, and that map had to have a call out on it that had the actual lat long on there. Then you could zoom into the area that you were interested in, and then type in the coordinates up here, and then it would make the call out for you there. So that's useful. Okay. All right, so next thing, no, I don't know how to get rid of that.
Delete it. Use the eraser or something.
Yeah, it's grayed out. No, I've never tried to delete that, so I'll have to figure out how to delete that here a little bit later. Okay.
Control Z work.
No.
Clear temporary graphics.
Good one. All right, so if you accidentally put something on there, then you can go to Edit and Clear Temporary Graphics, and that will get rid of it for you. All right, so the next tool that we'll talk about will be the measuring tool. So the measuring tool is particularly useful if, let's say, in codes, they need to know exactly how big a certain parcel is, or they need to know the exact length of a fence line because this person's encroaching on this person's property, and they just need to have more details about that information. So when you're using the measuring tool, and let's zoom in to, let's say, Park Place back here. Okay, we've zoomed in. If you need to know for some reason the size of this open space to see if they're meeting a certain zoning requirement that you have to have X number of open space or X amount of open space. I don't know what any of the zoning requirements are, by the way. But you could use the line tool, and you see how it automatically snaps to features? So it's trying to snap to whatever it can. It says right now it's snapping to town parcels and to vertexes. So I'm going to snap to that edge, and I'm going to snap to that edge, and that says in that segment there's 2,836 inches. Now, is inches very useful in trying to figure out, you know, linear? Well, you can go through the agony of dividing by 12, or you can just tell it to change the length from inches into feet. So if you ever go in here and it's in the wrong units, then you would just go to this first drop down. Always ignore this second drop down. You'll never use it. But the first drop down has the units in here for distance and for area. So for distance, you can make sure it's set to feet. For area, you can either make sure that it's set to feet, so it'll have square feet, or acres, depending on what you're interested in. So I'm going to leave it set to acres. And now you see that it automatically, I'm going to come out here real quick. Okay. Now it automatically has all the information that I just stored in there, but I want to clear that out, so I'm going to hit my X button right there. And I'm going to measure that again, and this time I'm going to get it in feet, 230 feet along that side. If I wanted to measure around the entire unit so that I could figure out how many acres it was, I'm going to click out there again, double click to get it to stop recording measurements, clear it out, and this time I'm going to use the polygon tool, and I'm going to click all the way around it and just kind of trace around the edge. Okay, and it's not perfect, that's okay. Double click to end, and that says it's 0.88 acres for that area within the open space up there in Park Place. I'm going to clear that out again, or I can just click on the measure a feature and then click on the feature that I'm interested in. And notice I just clicked on the edge of that. This is actually a parcel, this area in the center, and it tells me exactly what it is, and that's 0.96. So there was that much area that was off from me doing my rough and dirty measurement of 0.88, not clicking exactly and following the lines, to what it actually is when the system does it itself. So when it looks at that specific parcel, it's 0.96 or 0.93, but when I rough and dirty measured, it's 0.88. So there can be a source of error, just so that you know when you are measuring things yourself. I won't really talk about the summation tool. It would sum, like if you wanted to know what this parcel plus this parcel plus this parcel is, then it would sum all those together for you. I haven't used it very much. Most people don't need to know this parcel but plus this parcel, but again, you would just click on that specific parcel, and then click on that one, and click on that one, and it would sum all that up into acres. Okay, so that is the measure tool. Did I go through all those things? Yes, so the distance, clearing, yeah, that's everything. Okay, the next tool up here is the Hyperlink tool, and when I enable hyperlinks, initially it doesn't look like it does anything but change your cursor to a lightning bolt. But it actually does something else as long as you have a layer that has hyperlinks activated. The only layer that I have currently with hyperlinks on it is just the high school zones. If you have any layers, like if you want it to automatically link to a parks page, or if you want it to link to a floodplain page or something like that, then we could do that. But right now we have the high school zones, and you see how everything is hatched out. If I go to my regular zoom in, zoom out, then the high school zones are just blue. I'm going to zoom out to the full extent of the high school zones. And I'm going to turn off roads so that it's not as dirty. Okay, so those are all the different high school zones in Knox County. And when I turn my hyperlinks back on, notice all of them turn blue and all of them have that hatch. And when I'm outside of a hyperlinked area, then I have a lightning bolt. When I'm inside of a hyperlinked area, I have a hand. Okay, outside, lightning bolt, inside, hand. And if I click on it, it will take me to that school's website. Let's get out of South Doyle. We don't want to be inside. Just kidding. Okay, so we can click on Farragut's website. We can also click on Hardin Valleys. It gives us all the information that you, let's say that your kids have a ball game and you just need to get to it real quick, then you could do that. I really don't know why exactly we'd use it, but it's a good example just to show you how you could get that information. One thing that we have used it for stormwater, and I took this layer off and put it on Jason's individual Arcreader, is he took pictures at each of the stormwater features that he was interested in. So we've hyperlinked all of the GPS locations where he's taken these pictures to the picture file. So if you click on the stormwater feature, then it will bring up the picture of whatever feature it is, like that, let's say that manhole cover was, offset or something like that. Then you could see exactly what the problem was, and when it's fixed, you could go in and either remove it or whatever you wanted to do. Okay, any questions? Could just be because it's after lunch, or it could be because you guys remember all this from the last 3 trainings. You're very quiet. Okay, hyperlinks then. The next thing that we'll talk about will be the layer list. This layer list right here controls how these next 2 tools, the swipe and the transparency tool, work. Swipe and transparency are layer specific, and specifically with transparency, it will remember how you have it set for multiple layers. So you could potentially, I'm going to turn off these high school zones and zoom back into Farragut and turn back on roads. Okay. So what you could potentially do is, if we had the layer list set to town roads, then we could adjust the transparency of town roads just by clicking on that transparency button. And now they're there, but if you look on this screen over here, and you probably can't see it, but they're still there. It's just because this projector's so light you can't see it. So I'm going to take it down a little bit less. Now they're showing up a little bit more. Take it all the way back down, and now they're showing up even darker. Okay? Town roads, not necessarily the most effective one to do that on, so let's turn on the aerial. So here's our aerial, and right now it's a little bold, especially if we zoom in to a certain area. Let's zoom in to, let's go over to Bridgemore. And the quality of this aerial looks a little bad on this projector, but on your regular screens it should look okay, and on this screen it looks pretty good. But so here we have all these different parcels that we're interested in, and we could go to our layer list and go to the Farragut 2010 image, and then go to transparency. And let's say that we want it just to be a little bit muted in the background. You keep adjusting that to where it's basically almost a white background with just the appearance of the buildings in the back. So you can adjust how transparent any of these features are. And you can also turn off, adjust multiple layers. So if you wanted to, for the parcels here, there we go, and you wanted to adjust the parcels as well, then you can do more than one thing, is my point to this. So if you want to have a couple different ones that are transparent, then you can do that. The usefulness of doing some of this would be, around floodplains, or if you had multiple things with zoning and you wanted to show zoning, but you wanted to also show this and that, then transparency is really effective at showing multiple things. Now, let's go back to the image and change its transparency back to 0. And I'm also going to turn on the 2007 image. Another really useful tool that we have is called the swipe tool, and it's one of my favorites because it allows you to really quickly analyze change over time at a specific data set. So if I want to know how many houses have been built in Bridgemore between 2007 and 2010, then I could quickly use my swipe tool to roll the 2010 map back and roll it forward, and I can see, well, there's looks like 5 houses that have been built since 2007. So it's a really fun, cool tool where you can do some quick analysis and see how things have changed over time. And you can use swipe on any layer. So if you want to compare, imagery is the easiest one and the most obvious one to use, but you could potentially swipe off anything. Let's do this. Let's go to the floodplain layers. Zoom to extent. I'm going to zoom into some of the floodplain layers here. And they get really, really messy because there's just a ton of stuff going on those floodplain layers. And we'll talk more about what's all included in them in a second. But I'm going to turn off the Farragut 2007 image. Okay, so now if we zoom in to, let's say, this area right here. And we're interested in what's going on in this area, but because of the floodplain layers, we really can't see everything that we want to. Then the swipe tool would also be useful in that scenario. We would just go back up here to floodplain layers and use the swipe tool. And you could wipe those down as well. So if you needed to see a little bit more information about something, then you could do that. Okay, so that's the swipe tool.
Can you compare how floodplain has been changed? Changes over time based on different maps?
If you had different maps in there, so I have the FEMA 2011 update in there now, and then the floodplain layer, the old floodplain layers. They're a little hard to tell the difference right now because of the way I have them symbolized. They're symbolized very close to what they were before. But if we wanted to change the symbology, we could do that as well. So I'm just going to roll back the floodplain layers. There we go. So you can see how the hatching area has changed a little bit. And we may not have the right type of symbology to where it makes the most effective use of this tool here, Mark. So if you can help Carrie and I come up with the right set of symbology so that a comparative look at this is more realistic, then we can do that as well.
And handy to know parts of how they've changed different maps.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of changes.
And we may have to go in and look at the way we have each of these lines symbolized, change the colors to where they make a little bit more sense, because it's a little hard to tell, but you see that some of them are dashed lines, and the dashed lines indicate, limit of the detailed study, and the blue line is limit of the floodway and limit of the study. So there may be different ways that we can do stuff with some of the data we have to make it more useful for you. We just put in what we were given for now. So when you have time, if you want to sit down with us and talk about what we can do to make it more useful, then I'd be happy to do that. Okay, so it's a good question. Okay, so swipe tool. So the other tools that we have in here, which I don't really recommend using, but I'm going to show you how to use them anyway, are these markup tools. These markup tools are not the most useful tools because they're kind of sloppy. But let's say that you had a problem in this area right here. There was like a landslide, and there was just a bunch of sediment that dumped into the creek, and you needed to have somebody go look at it for X, Y, or reason, or better yet, let's do this. Let's go right over here. Actually, let's zoom out. we're going to go up to the farm at Willow Creek. That's a good place. Oops, did I go too far? Am I going in the right direction? I've lost myself. Hang on a second. Let me zoom out and zoom back in. If you ever get lost like me, sometimes you just have to do that. Just say, I know where it is on the big map. Alright. So now we're over here at the farm at Willow Creek, and we say, well, we went in and we repaired this area here, and we're not having any trouble at all anymore, but we may have to make a few more changes in this area right here. So it's useful for rough and dirty markups. So if you just need to show somebody where something's going to be and you want to send them a quick email, then you have a couple options here. I'm going to open up PowerPoint. Okay, so you've just made your markup map and you're ready to send that over to somebody. Option 1, you can just hit the print screen button, and when you hit the print screen button and then you go in PowerPoint, File, New, Create, there, blank. Okay, and then you hit Paste. Then it's going to give you a screenshot of exactly what you just showed. The good thing about this is that it has a timestamp, so if you need to know exactly when you looked it up, then it's on there. So that's option 1. Option 2 is that you can use the snipping tool, and the snipping tool is something that's exclusively new to Windows 7. May have been available in Windows Vista, I'm not quite sure if it was, but I know I just started using it in Windows 7. But the snipping tool is right here. You would probably find it if you have a Windows 7 machine. You would need to go to All Programs and then go to Accessories, and just like you would access the calculator, the snipping tool is within the accessories, so it's available on everybody's machine. So you would go to the snipping tool, you'd add it in there. If you want the snipping tool to be available all the time, like we have it on all of ours because we love this tool now, you would just minimize it, and then you would right click on it and you'd say pin it to the taskbar, and then it's always going to be available for you to take screenshots whenever you want. And it's extremely useful. You can do websites. If you like an image on somebody's website, but you can't right click on it and save it out as a picture, you can just do a snippet of it, and it's kind of cool. So you go to snipping, we go to new. Now it grays out your screen, and then you just click and drag where you want to take your picture of. So click, and then you would copy that picture, and then you go back into your PowerPoint and say, no, I don't really want to use that because it has all this stuff that I don't want. I really just want this because it's for the board, and I just need to show them what's actually happening, and that's good enough. Okay, so that's option 2, is use the snipping tool. Option 3, the reason I'm telling you all these different options is just in case something doesn't work. You would go to File, Export, and then you could export this at Farm at Willow Creek as a bitmap file. And export will be done in just a second. Okay, it's done. Go back to my PowerPoint presentation. That's not exactly what I wanted because I have this little bar over here that I didn't really want, so I'm going to hit delete, insert, go to picture. This one I saved on my desktop, Farm at Willow Creek, insert, and now I have a perfect image of exactly what was in my ARC map originally, and I didn't have to snip it myself. So that's the export function. The only negative about that is you can only save it as a bitmap, whereas if you're using the snipping tool, you can save it as a JPEG, TIFF, blah, 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 blah. So you may have a condition where you have to save it as a certain type, you may not. Okay, so that's the other option there. So let's say that you like this option. You like that you can export it out as a picture and you've made your map, but you think this is just a little sloppy and it's not really what you wanted, and you'd rather decorate it up in PowerPoint your own way. So what you would do is you would come over here and go to the eraser tool, which is in your markup tools, and then you would just click on the markup and it erases it away. Then you could go back and export it again and call this Farm at Willow Creek 2. Obviously you know what's going to happen here. It's just going to create a new file. But now I can bring it into PowerPoint, Farm at Willow Creek 2, insert, and I can use just the regular PowerPoint tools, shapes, to decorate this and make it look a lot nicer, and use gradient fills and all that good stuff. So if you wanted to make it look fancy and semi-transparent and all that other stuff, then you could do that. So fun things that you can do. So it just depends on what you want the final use to be. If it's a rough and dirty, you just need to get it to Public Works so they can fix something, use the markup tools. If it's something that's going to be presented, maybe you want to use PowerPoint to do that and make it look nice. If you need some kind of custom symbols, because you're going to have locations all over the place, like Jay wanted to add bird boxes along Parkside, so he wanted to see where those bird boxes would be. We made him custom little symbols that look like bird boxes everywhere. So we can do that as well. Okay, so that is your other option for markups. And, okay, any questions? Okay, before we'll go over saving things out in layout view, and then we'll go over everything in the table of contents, and then we'll basically be done unless anybody has any questions. But let's talk quickly about saving things out in layout view. So let's say that you like this map and somebody's sitting at your desk and they say, can you print that out for me? I need to go out into the field. Well, question one is, do you just want it just like this, or do you want it to have a Farragut logo on it so that it looks official? And if they say, oh yeah, I'm going to be out there with the state, put the Farragut logo on it so it looks nice, then you can go to the layout tool right here, or the layout view, and it will automatically put the Farragut logo and automatically put the north arrow and the scale that you're at, and you can change the name from zoning map, change it to Farm at Willow Creek. Oops. Farm at Willow Creek. Okay. Now, the only setbacks to this is that you only have this much space. So your title has to be pretty small, unless you bring it in as a JPEG, and then you can add a longer title if you want to later. So if you need a really long title, like changes to Farm at Willow Creek proposed in 2012 during the flood season, you know, something really long, then I would suggest that you go to title, remove whatever's in there. Now you're going to have it blank, and then you can either print it out as a PDF and mark it up in the PDF with the new title. So if you have Adobe Pro or Adobe Standard, then you can just add text in there. Or you can export it out as a JPEG now, and it'll have all this other extra stuff like the north arrow and everything else. So you can export it out as a JPEG that way. Or you can just hit print and it would just be ready to go like that. So a lot of different options for layout view. The other thing with layout view is once you activate the layout view tools, now you have a whole new toolbar of things that you can do down here. If you use this zoom in and zoom out tool, so the plus sign sitting on top of the paper, and you hit zoom in, it's going to basically pretend like you have a piece of paper in front of you and you're just getting that piece of paper closer to your face. So everything on the paper is getting larger. The Farragut logo is getting larger. Everything's coming closer to you. Now I'm going to use the zoom to the whole page button to get back to the full extent. And that is going to be different than if you use your original zoom tools that we were working with earlier in the data view. Because if you zoom in using those tools, your paper is going to stay in the same place. But if you zoom in, it's going to zoom you in just inside the map. Okay? So make sure, I've seen a lot of people come back and say they were confused about this or that because their zoom in weren't working, and it usually has to do with which zoom in tools you're using. So zoom in, zoom out on the paper is just going to get you closer to the paper. Zoom in, zoom out in the map is going to increase the scale of the map. So we also have panning of the paper. You can move the paper around if you needed to do something. And you can do the fixed zoom out of the paper, or zoom in of the paper, and fixed zoom out of the paper here. And then you also have that back to previous extent, just like we had in these tools. So these tools match these tools down here, except this works on the whole sheet of paper and the other works just inside the map. Any questions? Alright, so to access the layout view, remember that would be down here in this area, and you can also access it through view, and you have data view and layout view. So that's the other way you can get there. Alright, so real briefly, we'll just go over all the other things that are within the town map, just so that you know what these things are. You can be thinking about what are the layers, you know, would be nice to have in there, or gee, I really don't like that layer, it's stupid, it looks ugly, could we get rid of that layer, nobody ever uses it, whatever. So we've talked about the street labels, we've talked about subdivision labels. I'm going to zoom out to the full town layer, so I go to bookmarks and 40,000. And I'm going to turn off the aerial for a moment. And next thing we'll talk about will be permits. This was a layer that Karen asked for us to add, so now every quarter we get updates from the county that tells us where the active building permits are. And if we expand in our table of contents, we see that red are non-residential permits and yellow are residential permits. And we could zoom in to those specific permits and see where we have things going on. And if you wanted to identify information about those permits, then if you click in the center of the flag, it's going to go through all layers. Lovely. Shouldn't take too long. It's going to give me everything that has to do with that area. Let's change it just to permits. There we go. So if we click on the center of the flag there, it'll tell me all about that permit, what the permit number is, the parcel ID, who is the permit source, all this other good stuff, just any other information that we'd need about it is all in there. Now, if with the flag and some other symbols, sometimes it's hard to use the identify button. So if you ever click on it, let's say that you clicked at the bottom of the flag and it just wasn't giving you anything, so it's not giving me any results. The reason for that is that this symbol is actually in the center of the flag, which is really picky. But if that ever happens to you, the best way to resolve that is just drag and draw a box around the flag that you're interested in, and then it will automatically choose the right one. So most of the time, that's what I end up doing, is I'll just draw a tiny little box around the area that I want, and it's going to give me either that permit, or you can drag it around multiple permits, and it'll tell you all the permits in a specific area, and as you click on them, it flashes to them so that you know which is which. Okay, so that's building permits. That's a new layer. Now I'm going to use my zoom to previous extent to go back to Farragut and turn off permits. We also have the major road plan. So the major road plan tells us about all the different types of roads there. So when you combine that with the zoning map, then you have, information about how things are going to change. And we also have capital projects. Now, Daryl, I don't have a major road plan 2011 or 2012 in there, so if there's changes that need to be made, let me know, because we may have made the changes but just not put them on Arcreader yet. So we may have to talk about that and make sure that it's as up to date as possible. Okay, so those are the capital projects. So if we expand the capital projects, then we see that we had capital projects, 1 through 8, and it tells us where those are at, and so they're labeled on the map. Over here you can see that they're on there, but the transparency is a little light. Again, it has to do with this projector. So what we could do is just change the transparency of the capital projects so that we could see it like that. Now they're a little bit more obvious for us, and we could zoom into that area and add those as well.
Does that tell you anything about it?
Yes.
That's just the location.
No, if you click on it, well, it tells you a little. It tells me whatever I get from Daryl or from whoever gives me that information. I'll type in as much as you guys want to give me and record it in there for you. So if we're interested on capital projects and I click on capital projects, then it tells me that it's Kingston Pike at Everett Road, and then the cost was 1.7. All that information I typed in.
Estimated completion date.
I don't think that's.
Depends on what you have.
Yeah, it's whatever. Like if you give it to me on a spreadsheet and you'd say this is all the information that I have about the projects for this year, and then let's say that you either handed me a map with a markup and say, can you highlight these on a map and add it to the system, or if you just said it's at this intersection, can you put a number on there? Then I could add that dot with a number and then have all the information. That's actually really, really fast for us to do. So if you have anything already electronically in a spreadsheet format that you want us to join to anything in the map, then we can do that within just a matter of minutes because it's already electronic, and then boom, it's already programmed in there for you. So it's a great way to kind of join things together.
Is it resurfacing on there? I'm sorry. Like roads that are being resurfaced in a given year?
We do have a resurfacing layer, but it's not in Arcreader right now. We could add it if you'd like.
Is that stuff on the website as well? Or no?
I don't think so. That would, no. Anything that's on the Arcreader isn't necessarily on the website. We could turn anything that's on Arcreader into a website map, but it has to go through a certain level of, departmental approval to get it up there. So that's capital projects. Again, if you see something specifically, you guys, Chris and Daryl, that I need to update, let me know so that we can keep it as usable as possible. We've also got the town center buffers. So this is the buffer from the centroid, the exact geometric center of the town for 1 mile, 2 miles, and 3 miles out. So if you need to know how far something is out of the center of town, then you could say, okay, well, it's within 1 mile of the center of town, it's within 2 miles of the center of town, 3 miles of the center of town. We can do this type of buffer on any point that you're interested in, but for generic purposes and for this first cut at things, we just did from the town center point. And just remember that sometimes in your head, the town center point may be different from the actual geometric center, depending on the shape of the town. For example, the city of Knoxville looks like a giant giraffe. It has this big body in the city of Knoxville, and then it goes all the way down Kingston Pike and then grabs Turkey Creek with its head. So its actual geometric center is closer to West Hills than it is to the actual downtown, because that's its geometric center. It's where it falls relative to the overall shape. You could also have what's called, the official town center, which would be, town hall or something like that. Okay, so that's the town center. Let's turn that off. We also have Knox County zip codes. That's self-explanatory. We've got town limit, obviously, town roads. We've got edge of pavement. So if you're interested in, where the paved areas are versus the unpaved areas are, these are just linear features, I'll note. So if you're actually interested in paved surfaces, that would be down here in the town base map. So if we turn on the town base map and then turn on roads and parking of Farragut, then let's zoom in to this area right here. It's a good one. So you can see this actually shades in all of the paved surfaces that we have. And it also includes driveways. So good for somebody who, if you wanted to do analysis of pervious versus impervious surface, then you could do that. All right. Go back up. I'm going to turn off the town base map because we'll go talk about that a little bit more in a minute. And talk about edge pavement. Buildings. Buildings is a layer that's exclusively maintained by the town. So as buildings are demolished or buildings are created, then we have to go in there and manually update and add those. Now, we do get updates from the city, but we're from the county, but we only get those updated every 5 years, and so much change happens in 5 years in Farragut that it's not realistic for us just to maintain it 5 years. So we do it on our own, and then we send those back up to the county and say, well, this is what we have. And they do all of their buildings electronically through LiDAR, but they only do it every 5 years. So they get theirs very quickly. Ours are, as we look at new aerials that come out, so we see the 2010 aerial, and we'll see that a new building has been put down, like those Bridgemore buildings, then we'll manually go in and draw those in as we see them. So it is a manual process, but it's something that needs to be done. And unfortunately, Carrie and I don't have time to go and look at the aerial, in complete detail every single time because it's just not in the budget. So we don't review it every single time a new aerial comes out. But we, again, need you all to be our eyes and our ears, so if you see buildings missing or places where buildings need to be removed, then if you can send us emails to say, hey, take a look at Bridgemore, some new buildings have been added, or take a look at this area, those buildings have been demolished. And we can keep it as up-to-date and user-friendly as possible. For example, we were looking at McPhee Park earlier, and we saw that there's a building right in the middle of the splash pad or something like that that needs to be removed because it's not actually there. So if we turned on parks and go into, so we're going to do that later. Okay, so there's a building it's not the splash pad, but right there that needs to be gone away. And that could have been an old barn, who knows, but we'll get rid of that one as we find things like that need to be removed. Okay, so that's buildings. You guys know all about town parcels. We also have greenways. I'm going to zoom to the full extent of the greenways. Within the greenways, we have planned and completed greenways, and this is great to use as just a general, reference. Again, if you see things that need to be updated and changed, then let me know. Streetways is a different type of category. Streetways is anything that is not considered a greenway, but that's on the street. And Carrie, remind me that we need to cut out the streetways from our TOF GDD and put it in Arcreader 2006, because this has the old streetways in there. So this, a lot of cases, streetways would be connectors between greenways, where you have to go on the road a little bit to get to the next part of the greenway. And then we have sidewalks all over the town. We also have sidewalks that are planned and then completed. Anytime this status changes, Alexis is really good about sending me the new plats, and I can go in and add new sidewalks as they come up, or new greenways. So I use that as an option for getting them in there. Also, just your word of mouth. Fire hydrants all over the town. Dan didn't show up, and this has been mad. He didn't get to do first session. So we have fire hydrants everywhere. We don't have much information on those, but if we had it, we could add it. If there was a database out there, then we could add it.
On the greenways, what kind of information do you have on the down to that
If you were to, if you were to go down to, let's say, the McPhee Greenway and identify that, not capital projects, but let's just do the all visible layers. Okay. So there's that. Then it says that it's 1.4 miles, it's McPhee Greenway, and it's completed. And on this one, for example, it is a planned greenway. It's going to be at the cottages of Price Farm, and right now it's planned to be about 1/10 of a mile. We can add more, so you just have to tell us what other new features we need to add. We also have all the water mains from the First Utility District. And Carrie, if you could also add a note for me to call First Utility District and get an update. I haven't got an update from them in a while, and there may be a few changes specifically out at the cottages that I need to make sure we have. And we have all the sanitary sewer layers. So there's a lot of different layers within sanitary sewer: clean-outs, valves, manholes, force mains, stuff like that. So some of those things may be of more interest to you than others, but it is available there if you have a need for that. We've already talked about floodplains and the FEMA update. We also have topography, and this goes back to our very first question that we had about base benchmarks, and if you have a coordinate for a location that you're interested in. In our topography layers, we actually go down to 2 feet contours. However, those 2 feet contours won't show up until you're really zoomed in, because they take a long time to render on the map because it's so detailed. So if you zoom into McPhee Park, notice that those 2 feet contours now appear because we're so close in, but when we were zoomed out a little bit further, they were grayed out, so they didn't show up. But now we can see them. We also have the spot elevations turned on, which are the little X's all over the place here. There's an X right there. And then we have the spot elevation anode. So if we zoom in, the X represents where the actual benchmark is, and the 926 represents what the label for that is. If you don't really want the label and you just want the benchmark, then you can turn off the ANO, and you would just have the X on the screen, and you'd have that available. So the ANO is just the label, and the spot elevation, if you turned it off, you wouldn't exactly know where the 926 was. But that's kind of useful if you need to know something, let's say about the soccer field, and you need to know what elevation it was because there was a big tournament going on, and all these people from Mexico are coming, and they were used to playing at a certain elevation, and they need to know what your elevation is. Then it would be nice for you to be able to say, well, their elevations are higher. So.
Yeah, we're in Denver.
latitude, longitude of that spot elevation?
It doesn't have the latitude and longitude, but you could, if we close this, then we have the state plane if you just hover over that location. Yeah.
Can you find it with the XY? Can you click on it?
No. I think it's just because it's go-to.
Yeah.
Good thought, though. Okay, so that may have been a poor example, but the point is that those elevations are there, and we happen to be on a soccer field, and that was the only thing I could think of to use it. Okay. If you needed it for, let's say, a hike up the hill on the backside of the park, you would also have that information. Okay. These little lines everywhere that have the little hatch marks inside, that represents like a sinkhole or an area where there's a sink, a depression, where the topography is not going uphill and downhill, it's actually going specific downhill with no outlet. So if you see those anywhere, that's what you're looking at. So there's like a little bit of a depression on this side of McPhee, and you could find out more information about, you know, how steep was it. If the lines are closer together, that means it's very steep. If the lines are spaced further apart, that means it's not very steep. So that's Topography 101 for you. All right, urban growth areas. Carrie and I took a tour of the urban growth areas at lunch, and we didn't go out to the Cotton Eye Joe, but we went to these areas over here. So we have urban growth boundaries in Old Concord and then along North Shore. Well, actually, just along the railroad track over here. And then this road here is North Shore. And then we also have urban growth boundary areas on this side of town over here. So those are in there and available if anyone asks, you know, where would be the first places that Farragut would look to annex, and that's what is in the books to be on the available area. I don't think so. I think it just drew them in when I got them, so we can check and see though. Farragut urban growth boundary. Nope.
There would be a way to determine that dwelling units.
Oh yeah.
Size or
So if you wanted to know how many buildings were there?
each of those different.
Yeah, so you couldn't actually, I mean, you would have to count them physically if you were using Arcreader. But Mark, if you used your handy dandy ArcInfo/ArcView training and came down and used the big GIS station, then you could go and very quickly do an analysis of how many buildings are within that area. And anytime you have situations like that where you need to know how many buildings are within this or how many parcels.
No, because it's outside of our current.
County information.
And that's not.
We still have buildings for outside of the town of Farragut because we have all the buildings for Knox County from 2007.
Buildings are not
We'd rather had to look at the aerial for you.
Exactly. So yeah.
Yeah.
So we get an update from KGIS for everything in Knox County every 5 years. So, but we don't generally go outside to look at that.
Right.
So if we had to, then we could pull in the aerial photo and look at everything that's in there. We wouldn't necessarily know, is it a residential dwelling or is it a commercial, because we don't have that information. But
How far out does
the aerial goes just to the town boundaries. So it sometimes goes a little bit outside depending on where that square tile was. We do have more aerial available, but I clipped it to be that size so that it doesn't take so long to render. So if you have a need for more aerial, then come see us and we can get it for you. And we actually have a ton more, I'll just show you this real quickly. With version 10, we now have something available called, and this was actually available before, but we use it a lot more in version 10, called the ArcGIS Online Layers. So we can go in and access aerials for practically any place in the world. So this morning, Elliot said he needed to get an aerial of someplace near La Follette. Or no, he needed a topographic map, but we can get that too. So we can add.
I can't imagine what he needed. Interesting.
So with just a click of a button, we're able to access really high resolution aerial imagery for any place. I mean, this is Farragut, but this goes well beyond Farragut. So we can keep moving, we can go, and you see how the aerials change because Knox County has really great aerials, but Anderson County and other counties, you know, don't always have great aerials. And then you get into Oak Ridge and it has really good aerials. So they always change a little bit. But the point is we have aerials for everywhere.
What's great when you go further north and some have snow and some is the middle of summer and some is spring and some is fall.
Yeah. They're always changing. And some of them have clouds, like if you get into the Smokies, we'll just go over here and for a second. Then some areas are obscured by clouds, some aren't. You can see Kate's Cove. I think that's Kate's Cove.
The same kind of stuff is on Google Earth, right?
Except this is Bing. So the source for these areas are Bing versus Google, which has their own set of sources. A lot of them are overlapping. They both use Digital Globe as the source, but some of them are better than others. So like when in our regular consulting, not outside of town of Farragut, we work all over the world, everywhere, and so people will say, I need an aerial, so we'll have to go to all of our sources and say, is Google better? Is Bing better? Is Esri better? Is this better? Is that better? And try to find out what's the best source for people. So we're pretty good at finding alternative sources of stuff if you need anything outside of Farragut for some reason. And we can come up with that. Okay, so does that answer kind of that? Those are good questions about the urban growth boundary and how to use we do analysis. Mark, we could potentially bring in the urban growth boundary if we zoom to that layer. We could bring that in, we could bring in the buildings, and then all we would have to do, I'll just show you real quick.
Do you have the buildings clipped anyways?
I'll bring buildings Knox in. Structures. We've got all kinds of data. Structures, buildings of Knox. Okay. So these are all of the buildings, all of Knox County from 2007. So we've got stuff down here in Shodo and stuff. So let's zoom into this area right here. And let's also bring in the urban growth boundary.
Hurry up.
I think it's gone.
No, that's it right there.
Well, there is still one over.
The big money spot.
What do I call the urban growth?
Yeah.
Hang on one second. Urban growth. Hang on one second. I'm just.
And money wine.
Yeah. Muddy Wine and Powering
What's it called? Boundary. Okay. Boundary. Urban growth. There we go. Okay, so right now I'm going to zoom to the entire urban growth boundaries layer, and I'm going to turn off this base map for a minute just so that it refreshes. So the urban growth boundaries are given to us from Knox County, and so we have everything that's not already incorporated into something. And let me turn off the structures as well. So this is Knoxville, this is Farragut, and everything else is fair game, so to speak. So once we get that data, we look in the tables and we determine what's the growth plan and who's the plan for. So is it for Farragut, is it for Knox County, or is it for City of Knoxville? And you won't be able to do a lot of these things because this is in the full-blown ARC map, but I'm just trying to show you the science behind what we're doing. So what we would do is we would select all of the Farragut layers that are available, and we could either, the fast way to do this would be to just say growth plan is equal to, oops, no, clear. Cancel. Let's just paste it. Paste. Okay. Alright, so there's our layers that we're interested in. And we'll turn on our structures. And we'll make this hollow so that we can see it. And make the boundary purple. Okay. So we'll go up there to this area. And now we'll say select by location, where we want to select structures that are within our urban growth boundary selection. And we would hit apply. And now we have all the structures that are within our urban growth boundary. And we could create a selection just from that and look at the table. And we see that we have 52 structures that are within our urban growth boundary, without having to do a single count. So based on 2007 buildings. So does that includes like Old Concord and those areas. Does that answer your question? You seem like it's created more questions.
No?
So, again, that would be a question where you could come and work with Carrie and I. We could help you solve whatever problem it was, or whatever you wanted to do. Okay, so that's urban growth boundaries, and we talked about that. Talked about zoning. Talked about land use, subdivisions. That's a fun one to talk about. It's very colorful. I'll turn off topography and turn off greenways for a second so we can see those. Okay. So it's obviously gotten hung up here, so we'll hit the refresh. Yay! Now it's back. And what else is on that's causing all that white space? Town parcels, greenways off, buildings off. Okay, that's better. Okay, so now we just have our subdivisions in there. If we wanted to turn off our aerial, we could do that as well, and that would just give us subdivisions. Subdivisions don't have a lot of information in their layer, but if you click on it, it will tell you what subdivision it is and who is responsible for the annual report. So that's the only type of information that we are using right now for it.
You build in like the homeowners association.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that'd be great. And I think we even have a spreadsheet of that somewhere. So if we could.
Where are these?
Who's the Don?
There you go. We could do a heat map of
Who the Don is.
lots of information that we could add. Okay, so that's subdivisions. We talked about the county high school zones. We talked about how those are the only layer right now that currently have hyperlinks. Remember that we use that hyperlink button up there. So let's turn that off. We talked about parks. With parks, we have a couple different layers available. We have the trails, we have field lines, park facilities, and parks. We've looked a lot at McPhee Park, but let's just zoom in real quick to Mayor Bob Park because it has all the different trail designations. So we have all the different trails at McPhee Park that have different lengths, so depending on if you just walk this inner loop or if you walk the outer loop or if you walk the whole thing, then they have different links associated with them, and you can use the identify tool to get that information. So let's stretch that out. So the one I just clicked, that would be the blue trail, and that's the shortest of them. Let's move that over there. There we go. Blue trail. Then we have the purple trail, which is a little bit bigger, and then we have the biggest trail, which is the red trail, and that has the length in miles associated with it, whether or not it's ADA accessible, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So all that information is in here as well. It also tells you in general that it's in Mayor Bob Park and so on and so forth. So trails is fun. You could zoom over to Campbell Station and it would tell you if it was a mulch trail or if it was concrete or if it was this or that. So any information that we have is in there.
Do you have, are the field sizes in there?
I'm not sure if it's what you would want exactly. Let's see. So right now we have this in square feet. And we have that it's filled too lighter.
Yeah, the sizes and everything.
Yeah, if we wanted to say that it's like Division 1 regulation or whatever.
Yeah, that might be helpful. Okay.
Yeah. You could also add things like the perimeter if you wanted to. So if they were doing some type of activity and you didn't feel like using the measure tool, then we could just add that in, or you could just use the measure tool.
We just need the field size. That's important to our group, so it might be helpful.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Okay, so that is the parks layer. Outside of parks, we've got our streams. We zoom to that layer. Streams is one of those layers that we currently cut off at Farragut, but we have more information outside of Farragut. So if you need something, like Jason earlier asked if we could get some information further up into Knox County and maybe into Loudoun County, we can get that. It just takes a little bit of, Knox County, no problem. Loudoun County, we have to go in and make sure we have an accurate data source. So we have streams available. We've got the reservoir turned on here. Notice that it's not blue. It's not blue for a reason because when people turn on the aerial, then they still want to be able to see the lake over here. with its color, and actually it's white in here, so we need to fix that it's not showing up as white.
Actually, it's blue.
Is it? Ah, it is blue.
So you want it to be hollow?
I'd rather it be hollow, yeah. So we can adjust the transparency if we wanted to, but that's capital project. But we won't worry about that for now. We'll just make a note of that. Anything that you don't like the color of or it doesn't make sense to you, then come tell us and we'll fix it, we'll change it. Now, we've also got the town base map. So there are a lot of people out there who use the aerial and their parcels for information, but there's other people who just need kind of a general base map feel for, let's say, the Krogers or the Kohl's or something like that. So they turn off the aerial, and you could use the town base map for that function. So we will zoom into, let's say, this area over here. Okay. So now we would have a general map that shows this information about the town. It's just a nice, clean way to show the map. It looks different over here than it does over here. You can see the background is actually green, not weird yellow. And you can prepare that map the way that you wanted to, and then export it out as a JPEG and say, this is the planned. For example, we're going to do picnic on the pike in this area, and this is Ingalls, and they're going to donate so much things. So if you needed to do anything like that, sometimes using the aerial can cause too much noise in the background, so a nice clean base map is a little bit easier for you to make a graphic that you're going to hand out to people who are going to be setting up tents or something. In other cases, the aerial might be useful because you might use a tree on the aerial as a reference to, say, set it off about 20 feet off of that tree. So it just depends on, do you need the aerial or do you not, on when you would use this base map feature. The base map feature also has something called the building shadows. And what that is if you zoom into the buildings, it just kind of gives them more dimensionality, almost like they're 3 dimensions. It has that shadow layer. If you don't like the shadows, just turn it off. And then you have the real footprint there. And if you want them on, then they're on. We've also got the land use categories again. If you want to say, again, it's hard to see over there, but you could say that that's a commercial area or whatever that one may be. Okay, and then we have edge of pavement, which we talked about. Right. Now, hillshade. Let's see if I can zoom out a little bit more. Hillshade allows you to have the appearance of a 3-dimensional surface. So do you see how it has kind of that shape behind it, that shading? So it's a nice look to a map if you just want it to look more like a topographic type map. Then hillshade's a nice feature. And you can always turn off the parcels and land use and turn off the town of Farragut green if you wanted it to just look more, just changes the way that your map looks a little bit depending on what you want. So it's kind of a nice way to play around with it. It looks better over here where it's not so bright. All right, so those are all the layers. Those are all the tools. You're using Pub 2012-1 right now. If you have a shortcut on your machine that's pointing to Pub 2011 something, you need to delete that shortcut and create a new shortcut for Pub 2012-1. If you don't have version 10, you need to make sure that you get the old version uninstalled and the new version installed, and if you have trouble with that, let me know. If you don't have administrative privileges on your machine, let me know too, because then I need to get Allison to come help me and unlock it or add her password or whatever it is she needs to do. In record speed, less than 2 hours. Does anybody have any questions? No? Okay.
You did such a great job.
Thank you.
Seriously, yeah, you did it.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Well, you should be expecting a certificate which you should be able to use for continuing education credits. I'll put my seal on it so that you can send it into the state. This isn't a state-approved course exactly, but if you need some type of documentation that says, what the agenda was, how long the credits were, that's going to be on the certificate just like last time. And we get approval to use them at ARCADIS for this, so you should be able to use them as well. I may just have to write up an affidavit that says that I'm a certified instructor for this type of stuff, and so on and so forth. So you should get 2 hours of continuing education credits, and I'll give you the PDF of what all these different layers mean, and basically just how to use the tools. And we also have the movie with all of our questions and everything recorded on here, so that you'll have that for future reference as well. With that, we're done.
I do have one question. When you do an update and go, say, if you update something and go to version 2, 2012 2, is there any way that we could get an email or something so we'll know that that changed? Because I know sometimes I'll go in and there's something there that I didn't know was there, but I don't really know which one to grab or which one to use.
Yeah, always use the most recent one. And the general rule of thumb is if you see a Pub 2012 1 and a Pub 2012 2, always use the 2.
Sometimes there's some other stuff in there too, like
Use the one with the biggest, the rates.
just the number on it.
Just look up to your right.
Yeah, if we've got a shortcut, we don't know if I can later and bring it to the
Yeah, if you have it on shortcut, you have to manually go in and delete the old shortcut and add the new one.
If we don't know when it's updates are later.
I try to let Gary know when I do that, and so he'll just pass it out to the department heads, and then the department heads can send out the email to everybody. I don't have an email blast like with all of your emails on it, so I have to rely on myself to remember everybody's name to do it. So it'd be better if I can just send it to Gary and then have Gary send it to department heads, if that's okay.
That way, if we're using the shortcut, then we'll know, oh, look, we need to look for something else.
Sure. Yeah, no, I agree. And it's important that a lot of you keep it open all the time, which is perfectly fine. But if there is an update, then make sure that you close it down and then reopen and see what changes have happened. Unless for some reason you need to keep it open, like if you have a bunch of markups on there and you want to keep your version open just so that you don't lose something, then let me know. We can talk about, I can take that markup file that you've generated and add it to the new version. I just have to go in and change some things in the background, and then you can have your markups for that one as well. And they'll automatically show it. Any other questions? All right, that's it then. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Bill. Good luck in Colorado.
Thank you. Who knows when it'll be, though, so. We can. I don't know if it's in the budget for us to do it this year. Can you make a copy, like a color copy of that book, or just bring down the book and let us borrow it and look at it or scan it in, and so that we see kind of what format would be best for you, and then we can update it with the new stuff that we have. And does that work? Yeah. Okay. Maybe we can spend an hour just.
There's very few people who use it for artists for this program. It's just when somebody does want to just go and say, okay, this is really nice.
Another thing that you should know, let me cancel all this stuff out here and don't save. Okay, let me open up Arcreader again.
Either a raisin, that's either a raisin or
They're from today. Last week. If you click on any parcel, so let's zoom in to, like, let's, Village, which one we know has, like, multiple phases?
Foxton, Village,
Foxton, okay, let's go there. So let's say that you're in there and you click on the identify tool for a specific parcel in Foxden. Then it will tell you in here, at least it's supposed to, Row point, deed book. You know, it used to, but I don't see that in here anymore. It used to tell me what subdivisions of Alfred, Traylog. You know, it doesn't say subdivision in here anymore. Okay, well, we'll go with what you were just saying. I used to have a layer in here where it was attached to the subdivisions, and it would tell you what phase it was to. I don't have it anymore, so I don't know why I deleted it. I guess because I was never using it. But let's talk about that. I don't have anything so I can write on my phone. When you forget, so write it down. Okay.
Are you going to be here Thursday?
No, this Thursday I won't because we came today, so I'll be here next Thursday.
Well, I'll just, I'll bring the book down. Okay. Next Thursday. Just, you can hold on to it. It's pretty simple. Even though it's gone. That was one of that she wanted. She still does use it. The guys, code guys, sometimes use it, and engineering sometimes uses it. But it's so outdated now.
It's not being maintained. Yeah, well, I'll put it in the notes so that I'll remember something. Thanks. You're welcome.